Right, let's unpack this. Have you ever been absolutely convinced that you knew something would happen?
Oh, all the time.
And then it just goes the other way. Or maybe you bought a product, based on a review, and then immediately felt that buyer's remorse.
Well, the short answer is yeah.
Yeah.
You're human, and your brain, it loves shortcuts.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really cutting through the noise to analyze these systematic, unconscious errors in thinking that guide almost every decision we make.
Right.
We're zeroing in on 3 core cognitive biases. We've got confirmation, anchoring, and loss aversion. And then we're going to flip the script.
And that's the key part.
Yeah, our mission here is to synthesize how elite investors and entrepreneurs, I'm talking people like Peter Thiel, Warren Buffett, how they actively develop discipline to counter these mental shortcuts.
And find the opportunities that, frankly, the rest of us miss. And that's a really crucial distinction to make. These biases, they aren't failures of intelligence or anything like that. They're mental tools, heuristic. They're designed for speed, not always for accuracy.
But that speed comes at a price.
It does. The huge cost, leading to major errors in finance and marketing, even in, how we form social connections. We should probably start with the big one, the mechanism that keeps us so stubbornly attached to our own worldview.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias.
Which is the tendency to seek out, interpret, and basically just favor information that already aligns with what we believe.
While conveniently ignoring, everything else that contradicts it.
Right.
And the implications are they're staggering. Our sources really highlight how this plays out, not just on a personal level, but on a communal scale.
So like historically,
confirmation bias reinforced things like, say, Salem witch trials. Any little event can be selectively interpreted to confirm these pre-existing suspicions of guilt. And today, it's the primary fuel for all the polarization we see in digital media. If you only surround yourself with people who think exactly like you do, your existing beliefs are just constantly validated.
So they get stronger.
Stronger and way more resistant to change.
Okay, so to really understand why these shortcuts exist in the first place, where do we start?
You really have to go back to the foundational work of Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman.
From the 70s, right?
Yeah, starting with their groundbreaking work in the 1970s, they defined cognitive biases as these unconscious errors in thinking. It's basically mental shortcutting that we use to simplify a world that is, it's just too complex for a full, rational processing every single second of the day.
And then once we make a judgment, another sneaky bias kicks in. The one that makes us believe we were right all along.
Hindsight bias.
The I knew it all along effect.
It's where, after an event happens, we suddenly see it as having been perfectly predictable. It totally distorts our memory, makes us feel more insightful than we actually were.
And that's why it's so hard to learn from past mistakes.
Exactly. We convince ourselves the mistake was predictable, instead of really grappling with the volatility of that moment.
And there's a famous psychology experiment that really drives this point home, isn't there? The one tied to the confirmation of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah, that's a classic. So, before the Senate vote, I think only about 58% of polled college students predicted he'd be confirmed.
Okay.
But after he was confirmed, they re-polled the same students.
And the number jumped
to 78%. 78% of them then claimed they had believed he would be confirmed all along.
That's a huge jump. It really shows how quickly our memories just rewrite history to create this narrative of certainty.
And that idea of certainty is related to the availability heuristic. That's where our judgments are based on how easily examples or instances come to mind. We favor things that are vivid, memorable, or recent.
So the key isn't how many times you've actually seen something, but how easily and quickly that instance just pops into your head.
Precisely. That's the subtle difference that messes us up. And the classic example of this is asking people if there are more words that start with the letter K or words that have K as the third letter.
Okay, so I'm thinking king, kangaroo.
Right. Those are easy. They come to mind so much more easily than words like acknowledge or askew.
So you just assume there are more of them.
You assume there are more starting core words, even though statistically that is completely incorrect. That ease of retrieval is the true mechanism of the bias.
Let's move this into the world of commerce. Because if you've ever walked into a store and seen a massive original price crossed out next to a much lower sale price,
you've been anchored.
You've been subjected to anchoring bias. This is when we rely way too heavily on that first piece of information, the initial anchor, and then we just make insufficient adjustments from there.
Marketers use this constantly. I mean, when a product is initially priced high, say a t-shirt for $100, and then it's discounted to $60.
$100 is the anchor.
It is. It completely reframes your perception of $60, making it feel like a deal, even if the shirt is, intrinsically only worth $15.
And we see this genius level manipulation in that famous Williams-Sonoma story.
The bread maker.
The bread maker. They released a $275 bread maker, and sales were sluggish. So their solution.
They introduced a new, more advanced model priced at $429.
And suddenly, sales of the original $275 model just soared.
Because that $429 price point served as this high-price anchor, making the original look like a mid-range bargain.
It's brilliant.
And then anchoring is really high stakes in negotiations. If you're going into a salary discussion, you're hoping for, say, $55,000.
Right.
And the recruiter makes the first offer at $30,000. You'll likely feel compelled to adjust down from your original number.
We are immediately on the defensive.
Our sources suggest that making that first strategic offer can save a company significant funds, all because of the power of that initial anchor.
That is the immense power of going first. Okay, so if the fear of missing out sells products, the fear of losing money keeps us stuck.
That's loss aversion.
Right, where the perceived pain of giving something up, an object or a position, is about twice as powerful as the pleasure of getting it in the first place.
And that links directly to the status quo bias. It's our innate preference for just keeping things exactly as they are, because any change...
It carries the risk of a loss.
Exactly. In investing, loss aversion shows up as the disposition effect. It's just a fancy term for holding on to a losing stock just because selling it feels like accepting failure.
So investors are stuck. They're making decisions based on past history and psychological pain instead of looking at the present market fundamentals.
Yeah, but
What's remarkable, though, is that loss aversion isn't some unshakable law of human psychology. Research shows that if the possible gains and losses are structured symmetrically, the bias can just vanish.
it can completely disappear. And even more counterintuitively, if the potential loss range is made significantly larger than the gain range, the bias can actually reverse.
So gains start to feel bigger than losses.
Potential gains loom larger than losses. Context just matters enormously.
So if loss aversion keeps us stuck internally, we also need to think about the outside pressure. I mean, how much of our behavior is driven by what other people are doing?
That's social proof. The principle that people just mirror the behavior of others, especially in uncertain situations.
Which is why 95% of consumers read online reviews before they make a purchase.
We trust the crowd.
We trust the crowd.
Absolutely. And successful digital businesses leverage this so well. Booking.com creates urgency by showing you real-time data. Ex-customers booked this room in the last 12 hours.
Right. Creates a little bit of panic.
It does. Companies like Refs boost their credibility by proudly stating 20,355 users joined in the last 7 days. It leverages our innate human tendency to follow what we perceive as the consensus to influence our decisions.
Okay, so we've established that our brains are, they're designed to take shortcuts, follow the crowd, and avoid loss, if that's the consensus.
Then how do the truly elite investors and entrepreneurs find these massive opportunities that everyone else misses?
They have to reject the consensus.
They view consensus as a vulnerability. You look at someone like Peter Thiel. He advocates for a strategy of being non-consensus and right.
I love that phrase.
He argues that competition destroys profits. He's famously called competition for losers. To win, he says, the goal must be to build a monopoly by finding secrets.
And secrets are just important truths that the rest of the market ignores or dismisses.
Usually because of their own confirmation or availability biases.
So Thiel is basically saying, if everyone agrees on something, you've already missed the opportunity. His 7-question framework for vetting a startup is designed to break this kind of consensus thinking.
It is.
And we should emphasize the importance of engineering question.
Yeah, the engineering question creating breakthrough technology, not just, incremental improvement.
And the secret question.
And the secret question identifying that unique, hidden opportunity that consensus thinking just completely missed.
Okay, so if Thiel is the radical contrarian fighting confirmation bias, then Warren Buffett is the model of discipline. He's fighting the availability heuristic and loss aversion.
Totally. Buffett's strategy is rooted in staying within his circle of competence.
Only invest in what you know.
Only investing in businesses he profoundly understands. Because that objective knowledge, it's like an inoculation. It protects him from market panic.
And then there's that famous emotional discipline. Be greedy when others are fearful.
A classic. When market downturns cause the average investor to panic sell, driven by this intense fear sparked by the availability heuristic.
Buffett moves in. His decisions are rooted in fundamental valuation, actively ignoring that emotional herd mentality.
And similarly, you have Ray Dalio, who fights bias by viewing the market as this interconnected objective machine. His systematic analysis approach combats hindsight bias, making sure he learns the right lessons from past cycles. And his portfolio reflects this. It's a blend of broad diversification, like S&P 500 ETFs, with these really targeted investments based on durable secular changes.
For instance,
Like investing in Visa, betting on the global shift toward cashless payments. Or Costco, because he recognizes its resilient revenue model and intensely loyal customer base.
so the same mental processes that guide our investments, they also define our social lives. Let's loop back to those digital echo chambers. When confirmation bias gets amplified by platform algorithms,
You get what's known as social media-induced polarization, or SEMNI.
it's my.
It describes how social media platforms reinforce our biases by constantly feeding us content from like-minded individuals.
So you're just getting more and more of what you already believe.
Exactly. This constant validation strengthens those existing belief systems, acting, as our sources suggest, as a society-fracturing tool by isolating people into these little information bubbles.
And as technology drives our search for information, it's also driving our search for connections. The U.S. online dating industry is huge,
Valued at about, $3 billion in 2022?
and it has segmented aggressively. It often plays directly into our biases,
Oh, you see it everywhere. Platforms catering to specific emotional anchors and needs. A Cupid uses detailed compatibility questions on values.
which appeals to that confirmation bias for finding the right type.
Exactly. Bumble empowers women to start the conversation in heterosexual matches. And then you have these highly selective apps like The League.
Right, which has a selective admission process and a subscription that starts at like $299.
That high price and that exclusivity, that acts as an anchor. It convinces users that the pool of people is of a higher perceived value.
But this convenience, it comes with risk. Our sources highlight that 66% of women under 50 and 64% of LGBT users have experienced at least one unwanted behavior online.
Things like unwanted sexual messages.
Yeah, and to counter this risk, the apps have to build in safety protocols that fight these biases.
Absolutely. Features like instant blocking and really robust reporting systems are essential. And alongside that, you need sophisticated profile verification, like Tinder's requirement for a real-time selfie, to minimize fake accounts and increase trust.
And finally, let's tie back the earlier points about social proof and the availability heuristic. Let's tie that to the digital creative world. For content creators, success is often just a numbers game.
That's right. Successful creators learn that quantity actually breeds quality. They're often posting 50 to 200 videos before they achieve genuine viral success.
They have to engineer virality.
They intentionally engineer it, sometimes using subtle retention tactics like adding small, distracting details in the background of a video just to gain the engagement algorithms.
So that exploits the viewer's attention.
And it increases the availability and thus the perceived credibility of the creator's next piece of content.
So we've taken the deep dive today. We've mapped out the architecture of these mental shortcuts: confirmation bias, anchoring, loss aversion, and we've contrasted them with the disciplined strategies of market leaders who actively fight these human tendencies.
The ability to overcome these biases really is the difference between just following the consensus and finding genuine opportunity.
Right?
And to combat them, you need specific strategies. You have to actively seek out disconfirming evidence to fight that confirmation bias.
Look for the stuff that proves you wrong.
Exactly. Rely on statistics over vivid anecdotes to counter the availability heuristic, and use objective criteria for valuation rather than focusing on past mistakes or, emotional intent.
And in the real world of commerce, if you're entering any negotiation, you have to set your own anchor first. Or at the very least, immediately challenge the first number that's presented.
Don't let someone else's number frame your entire perception of value.
Right.
Intellectual honesty, whether it's in finance or in life, it means making decisions based on present fundamentals, not on past regrets. and certainly not on the comfort of the status quo.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. The status quo bias makes us resist change, even if the alternative offers a dramatically better outcome. So Peter Thiel is right that the best companies are built on unpopular secrets that the consensus misses. What important truth are you holding back from acting on simply because you are choosing the comfort of the status quo? We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.